Alright, welcome to Stampscaping 101. This is a scene that I stamped out a couple days ago using the Lighthouse on a half-page piece of Lapis Lazuli Stardream paper. And it was kind of an experiment. I was trying to feel my way around certain types of applications. Would certain things work? What things wouldn't work so well, etc. But let's stamp a quick scene version of this one in kind of more of the, the types of stamping format that that's more realistic that we're going to be using all the time. Okay, this one took about, I don't know, it was something like an hour or something like that. But again, I was trying to feel my way through certain techniques and to see what would work and what wouldn't work on that type of paper using the ink combination, okay? Now, if you'd like to stamp along with me, this is a quarter-size piece of dark cardstock. I happen to be using the Stardream Lapis Lazuli right here. You can use any type of darker cardstock. I wouldn't go all the way to black because I don't know if we'll be able to see our impressions over the top of it. This is a matte size dark blue. I don't think it's even cardstock, it's just paper, okay? You can use something like that. It doesn't have to be a pre-folded card or anything like that. And like I said, this is a quarter-size page right here, so 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. But you can use something similar. You can go with a longer format, whatever. You would just kind of adjust your composition accordingly. But you can use the same techniques that we're going to be using on this one here. Okay, so like this one, what we'll do is we'll incorporate. This is set number 12 right here, by the way, and you might even have these in individual stamp forms as opposed to the set. But what we'll do is we'll use the Seaside Cove here, the Lighthouse, some of these rocks right here, maybe the birds. I don't know if we have room on this quarter-size card. Well, then we'll stamp in some the tree as well. I don't think we'll use the cloud space in this one, and I'm not sure if we'll have room for that sailboat or not. But if there are, you certainly can do it. Do any type of I don't know, versions of the scene that you want to. All right? All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to do an easy mask on here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mask off a horizon here. Okay, now here's the things that I learned on this. I mean, when I stamp out our scenes of this, I'm going to be using my Versafine black for the imagery. I just think that it gives it a really dark impression over the top of this dark lapis lazuli. You can try a black dye-based ink on there if you have one. If you have it, I don't know, make sure it's pretty inked up, not sloppy juicy where it's going to fill in all the details and things like that. But I think I want to get all this kind of white types of marks and clouds established so that all we have to do is stamp right over the top of it. I think we're going to even do that light beam ahead of time, okay? So let's give that a try here. I think that's going to be a fast, quick, and easy way to do it. So just in general, what I'll do is I will kind of designate an area for my lighthouse. Let's say it's going to go over here. Let's leave plenty of room for our light beam. And what I think is going to be the easiest thing to do is to designate an area or a point from which that light beam from the lighthouse is shining, okay? So I'm just going to use my white paint pen and put a little dot there, okay? And that will be the point that we use for our light beam, okay? And then when we stamp this out, we're just going to aim right for that little lighthouse in there, okay? Or that lamp portion of it. All right? So we have our little dot there. And, okay, now after that, what we'll do is we'll designate a little bit of horizon. So maybe my horizon will be roughly about right here. Okay? All right. Lamp and horizon there. Okay? Now see here, the horizon will go to about right here. Okay? So we'll do that little horizon line to about right here. And I'll show you a couple other things that are going to give us a head start in terms of this entire process, but we'll get to that. Okay? All right, so let's see. What shall we do first? Shall we do the light beam first? I guess we can do that. Could be anything. It could be the horizon line or the light beam. All right. Okay, so a couple pieces of just scratch paper like that, whatever you want to use. You can make your light beam as narrow or wide as you want. Don't make it so wide that it goes, like something like that down into, down into your water area. But I don't know. There's no set amount that you have to have it angled to. Okay. All right. Now, this is what I always recommend: 100% cotton balls. Okay. Now, a lot of your pads, most of your pads, are going to be juicier than mine. Okay. This is a white pigment ink pad. And what I want to do with that, okay, now see, I'm inking it up like so, okay? You can hear me kind of tapping into it. Chances are your pad is going to be so juicy you might barely touch it, okay? And it might get 10 times as much ink as mine, because mine's kind of dry right now. But what I want you to do is I want you to just kind of dab that off quite a bit, okay? If you know it's wet. If you have a dry pad like mine and you know it, then, you can have a good feel for that. But even just dabbing it off like this, for me, it's kind of compacting that ink back into the cotton ball there. All right? But here we go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start tapping it in here. In fact, my pad is so dry, I need to really get it in there. But what we're going to do is we're just going to, don't do this all in one fell swoop like this, okay? Kind of, compact it a little bit more in here. And if it's super juicy, okay, see, here's mine. Like that. Barely shows up, okay? But if yours is super juicy, then, even wipe it like that, wipe it off like that a little bit, okay? We don't want too big of a buildup of ink, okay? It's more kind of this light going through fog, you might say, okay? Or imagine it so. It's little molecules of light in the air. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to taper it a little bit more. You can do a solid beam, okay? And that looks pretty good too. But what I think it looks a little bit more natural is if, and you can do this too. It doesn't have to be completely even. It could be kind of blotchy, okay? Don't make it sloppy blotchy though. Like where it's like super thick paint everywhere. But see, I'm kind of going like this. It's a little bit stronger on that part of the beam, and add it over here. It's like where it's moving through, thicker areas of moisture in there, fog or whatever, right? Okay, see that right there? See, it's like a little bit thicker right there, a little bit, thicker here. It's less thick in here, so it kind of oscillates that way, like that, okay? You can make it where it's, I like it where it's kind of curtained too sometimes, where it's more ink on the top and then it kind of transitions down. There's less ink on the bottom. I just think it makes for kind of a more, I don't know, naturalistic beam that way, okay? This is an example of it right here too on the scene I did last night. Thicker in some areas, some beams are really very delicate, hardly any white ink applied, but it just oscillates, okay? Thicker, less, thicker, less, thicker, less, you know what I mean? So on and so forth. That takes us off the hook of having to do everything completely uniform too. All right, so here's our horizon line like this. What you're going to do is you're just going to want to generally match the edge up like this, okay? Now here's our horizon line right here. We're going to stop right around here, okay, at that second little dot that we added right in here. Here's my horizon line. And we're going to stop right around here because the lighthouse is going to go right up here, like that, okay? And I don't want like a white line showing up right through the lighthouse. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. You can kind of drag it like this too if you want to. Kind of go, what I'm doing is on this one right here, I have my cotton ball kind of halfway on the page, maybe even, I don't know, 2/3 on the mask, and only 1/3 on the paper, okay? Now you don't have to stop right at that dot there, just kind of transition it off a little bit, okay? But anyways, so there's your horizon line right there. It happens real fast. It doesn't take a long time or anything like that. If it's not smooth, you can kind of drag it around. The lapis lazuli really allows you to kind of, I don't know, move the ink around if you want to you know, if you need to smooth anything out. You might be getting some blobs here and there, okay? And that's not really going to matter because remember, we're just going to stamp an image right over the top of it too, so things don't have to be perfectly smooth. Okay, so we have something like this. All right, now one of the things that I tried with, I have all these scenes on my desk here that I've been playing around with, but I don't know where it is. But one of the things I did that was kind of fun was I did a vertical kind of column like this. And what that might represent is some lighting on the ocean. You know, that little kind of reflected light. Usually there's a moon or something up top here, but I'm not going to have a moon. But I thought I'd just put this in here just for a little bit of variation when we stamp out our seaside cove right there. Okay, something like that. You can almost kind of already imagine that lighthouse, right, being right in there, huh? And the light on the lake, or I don't know, it could be a Great Lake or the ocean or whatnot. All right. Okay. Now, here's the thing that I'm going to do too. If you see these crashing waves down here, okay, we're going to add that in a little bit, or it's also in the lighthouse stamp. Okay. Lighthouse is going to go right here. Down here, in these crashing waves, I think I'm going to add a little bit of white so that it looks like the light is kind of reflecting off of some of those crashing waves. So you can just kind of put this little bit of a fog down here like so, okay? So those little crashing waves will kind of show up a little bit more because we're increasing the contrast between the stamp and the background. You know, black on dark blue won't show up so much, but if we lighten it up in here, then the area down here in these crashing waves on this image will show up a little bit more. Does that make sense? So see if I stamp it right down here, that will show up, okay? All right. Okay, now let's do a little bit of cloud texturing, okay? This could have been the first thing we did too, but I don't know. It's kind of nice having all these little, I don't know, kind of points of, not interest, I don't know, whatever. I don't know, our reference points, I guess, you know, the ocean, that's, you know, that's surface, that's sky there, whatnot. I mean, we had those two little dots there too, but, okay, so you're going to rip your paper towel. I'm trying to get a nice rip in here, one that would look like kind of a cloud or whatever. I don't know what clouds look like. You know, they look like anything. Okay, and you're just going to lay that down like so. Okay, you can put it could even be a bank of clouds down here. It could be going in a diagonal like I did up here. You know what I mean? There's no set thing. It can even be a cloud coming from above. You know, like up there. Whatever you want to do. Let's just do it. I'm going to reference my own scene where I did my cloud kind of at a diagonal. Just, you know, so we can see kind of another version of that previously stamped scene. So I'm going to do something like this. Okay? Now, on this one right here, I don't want it to interfere too much with that light beam. I want my, you know, lighthouse light beam to be a little bit stronger than the background, so I'm just going to make this cloud fairly light, okay? Now remember, kind of blot your, every time you ink up, kind of blot it off a little bit if your ink pad is really juicy, okay? And like I said, most of your pads are, because I don't know, we just don't use our white ink, you know, white pigment ink pads that much, okay? So see that right there? And you can move this around too. It doesn't have to, you don't have to just stay like that. You can kind of move this around as you go, okay? It's one of the nice things about this kind of technique here. You can just kind of move it around like that, and then I can come over here if I want to. Okay, what I do now, just remember like the lighthouse, I add a little bit more here, and then see I taper it like this down here. So there's a little bit more up here on the edge of the cloud, and then I just kind of add it right down here accordingly. Let's see, let's make this a little bit more of an angle down here. You don't need to mask off your your horizon line. You can just kind of just stamp right into it. It's not going to matter, okay? And now see what I do with this is I come over here, like that. You come down here and you can make some extra little billows and kind of build up that cloud structure. Clouds aren't just like one edge and then flat in here. They're multiple, billows. They're dimensional. So if you put in that extra cloud in here, or you can put in 5, if you want to, you can just keep masking it off like that. But look how great that looks. Isn't that fun? If you do this, it's like you'll never have 2 clouds the same because your tears are going to be different. You're going to use a different amount of ink each time. I can use the same paper towel mask and do this again, and it'll look different, just because of the variation and just the variety that can come about from this type of process right here. Okay, adding this in, I'm building this out like that. Now what I like to do on this is after I do that, I think it looks okay, but I like to really kind of blend this out a little bit. I go above my clouds like this, okay, just with a light touch again, and then I build it out this way too, okay, into the body of the cloud. And again, I like it a little bit more irregular, okay? I like some areas a little bit lighter and some areas a little bit darker, okay? So leave some areas maybe a little bit crisp, and then other areas just kind of diffuse it. So have variety in there, don't treat everything the same. That's one of the hardest things to do sometimes, because I think inherently a lot of times we go for pattern and we go for similarity everywhere. But I think when it comes to things like visuals and art, as well as nature, you get a lot more variety. There's a difference in shapes and things like that. I notice that when we're adding things like stars, everyone wants to space their stars out if they're doing it by hand, like perfectly, like they're always like 1/4 inch apart from each other, okay? It's kind of working against kind of our inclinations when we make things a little bit more irregular in doing something like that. All right, so there's our clouds in there. And see, we're only at, what am I at, the 17-minute mark. When we stamp our images in here, it's going to be, when we start doing that, it's a relatively fast kind of process right there. But I don't know, you can kind of get a feel for it. See right here? Okay, now, if you want to, you don't have to do this, but I don't know, this thing is coming together so fast. You could take some black pigment ink here. I already had this little cotton ball right here that I used. And if you want to, you can kind of go in and just very lightly, if you want to add a little bit of extra dimension into your pieces, see, I'm kind of adding that into the corner right there. See how it kind of, I don't know, makes things stand out a little bit more. I'm not going for a black kind of application. It's just kind of more of a light gray like that. That's what I'm doing right there. It's a dry brush kind of approach. Imagine like you're applying, I don't know, like a powder to it or something like that, like a makeup or something like that, You don't want to, like the slathering, you want to just build it up nice and slow. Okay. So I'm kind of adding that around my cloud a little bit. I can add it into my cloud too. You can add it down here in the water as well, in a couple areas. See, I'm kind of avoiding my, that little glow down there too. But I don't know if you can tell, but see, it added a little bit of dimension to it. Doesn't it look a little bit more, I don't know, kind of deep and, I don't know, a little bit further rendered, I guess, or something like that. And it's just a simple little touch of, to what does that take us like 10 seconds there. All right. Okay. Let me grab my blocks and we will proceed with the stamping, okay? This one right here takes a pretty big block, so I hope you have a acrylic block or something to accommodate that size of stamp there. You know, you can use anything. It doesn't have to be an acrylic block, just anything nice and flat and firm. I guess you can just, if you have the cling version of this, I guess you can just use the, you know, this stamp and just lay it down on there if you want to, and just go like this, you know, and just put something flat and kind of press down on it. Now, I doubt if I'm going to hit that horizon line perfectly, okay? I didn't last time. I was a little bit off, but who cares? That's not going to matter so much. Okay, no, the lighthouse is pretty easy. You can see that where that tip is going to be right in there. So that's where that is going to be stamped out. All right, now here's the thing. You might be able to add a little bit more white pigment ink in this if you really want to, but after you stamp these out, the ink's going to be wet for a while, especially if you're stamping on lapis lazuli. If you're stamping on that kind of just matte paper, you know, it's going to dry pretty fast because it's very absorbent and porous and whatnot. The Stardream papers are a little bit less porous, or a lot less porous. They still dry on here really beautifully, but get all that white work done ahead of time just to make it easier for yourself, okay? All right, so there's my beam coming out of that lighthouse point right there, okay? Like I said, if you don't miss it by like an inch or something like that, but if you're off like a eighth of an inch, you know, either way, which makes a quarter inch, you know, of tolerance, that's quite a bit. So just take your time, okay? So there it is coming out like that. Okay. We're going to really bring this thing to life too, with a couple more things that we'll do. All right. I'm going to get this one set. This is the rocks and waves here, but I think let's stamp the seaside cove now. Okay. All right. Got to think opposite. Even after all these years, I have to kind of figure things out a little bit here. Okay. See where this is going to go like that? This part right here is stamping right into that. Light Rocks and Waves, the lighthouse. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to not ink up the whole thing. Okay, I'm going to go for about this portion of it right here. Ink up a little bit more than you think you're going to need on this side though, okay? But I'll probably go up to about right here where that's going to go into the lighthouse, okay? So just a little bit of planning. Yeah, I mean, you could mask off the lighthouse, too. Maybe I'll do that, too. I don't know. I'm just trying to avoid as much kind of, I don't know, process work as I can. Like that. You know, that's your mask right there. Okay, just mask off the rock portion of it like that. And you're set to go. Under mask, though, okay? Have some of that showing, like a quarter inch or something like that. Okay? Because you don't want to mask it off all the way and then have this big space in between the seaside cove and that. Of course, if you do, then all you do is just fill it in with some additional black ink, and that's no problem. But if you don't have to do it, you know, to begin with, then all the easier. Okay, so I'm just going to roughly line up this line with that one right there. There's a little bit of extra space in between the edge of that rubber and the image, you know. We don't cut it, you know, right up to that line because we don't want to cut the rubber, so something like that. And where the mask is, okay, that paper towel, paper towels aren't really thick, but they're thick enough to where you want to give a little bit more pressure around that mask, okay? Like I said, if there's a space in between, then we'll just fill it in with a little bit of extra ink. I do it all the time. Okay, plenty of pressure on the middle of your stamp. Don't rock your stamps like this either, because, you know, it's going to give too much ink in one area. Okay, I did a little bit better than my first time. It's because I stamped it a little bit higher than I thought I would need. But look at this little, you know, doesn't that little white column down there look great? Now, see, that's what I learned on my first one. You have to kind of add that in before you stamp it out, you know, that way. See, I can't, this black right here is going to be wet for a little bit of time. So if I try to apply wet, you know, white ink right over the top of this right now, it's going to smear the imagery. Think how great that looks. It was just so easy to do ahead of time. I'm not used to working that way a lot of times, so learning something new with this type of process in terms of what to do first to make things a lot easier for ourselves. Okay, now this is just some those additional rocks and waves like this. I'm going to stamp this down because I have a little bit of space down here. Okay, and we'll bring a little bit more kind of dimension into it. Okay, fill this area in like so. All right. And I think just to kind of balance off this area over here, I'm going to put another one of these rocks right over here. Okay, maybe even go for two, like that. So that kind of gives it a little bit of the shoreline in here. It kind of establishes this area where there might be some tide pools in here and whatnot. If it was back in the day, and there's rocks like this around here, my dad would be out there on a low tide going for abalone. All right, so that looks really great in terms of kind of the different imagery, impression relationships or whatever, okay? I really like being able to just kind of establish all that ahead of time. Now see it down here, in these, remember where we kind of added that white pigmenting down here? We can see those waves a little bit more. Otherwise it would have been, you know, I've colored so much of this already. You know, it would have been this tone right here as opposed to that tone. So lightening up, I don't know, maybe we could have even added a little bit more down there of that white ink before stamping it out. I think it would have looked pretty cool. But I think that looks okay though. All right, so let's see what we have on this one here. Oh, okay, I didn't stamp out the branch. Of course, we can do that now or later. Okay, this is the spooky branch. I just like having something kind of on the shoreline. And a lot of times when I think of lighthouses, I'm thinking, you know, kind of turbulent seas, weather. Okay, now this branch happens to have this nice kind of curvature. It's like it's been kind of, I don't know, not sculpted by the wind, but certainly wind influenced in terms of its growth here. And adding things like this just adds extra depth and dimension into a piece. Okay, and now one of the things I'm not going to do on this one, not everyone has things like bleed-proof white, but I think a lot of you are starting to get that Miaosun white paint pen. If you have a white gel pen, that'll work too, provided your gel pens are working, of course. So I'm going to not apply the splatter painting technique up there, but we'll just go with a white paint pen. And let's bring the lighthouse to life with a little bit of humanity or whatever on the inside of the light. Okay, so I'm just taking my white paint pen and I'm adding it into the light like so, okay, and right up into the lamp right here, okay. All right, doesn't that kind of bring it to life? And then, okay, let's see. Let's add, I'll add, some little, there's these little dots in the Seaside Cove, and maybe where I did that little column of light, I'll add a few little dots. I'm doing them in a horizontal kind of pattern right here. And I'll add most of them in that lighter area, okay? Then maybe I'll transition it by having just kind of a few little dots in that area. So there's a little bit more down this area right here that's reflecting the light, right? So I've just kind of reiterated it, that lighting convention that we did with our column of light. And just a few of those extra little shimmering bits. Doesn't that bring the water to life too? Okay, now what we can do is we can bring in some stars into the sky, like so. If you have some of those little gems like I used in that half-page one, you can add those in as well. You know, a few little stars in that, you know, in the beam. It's like they're shining right through that beam. Okay. Kind of see this. What I was doing, I was clustering some of my little dots like that. You know, so everything's not just perfectly like a pattern. All right, let's take a look at this right here. Okay. You see on some of these clouds, if you want to, what I've been doing is I've been adding, you know, a few little dots on the edges. Some of these clouds are not reflecting a lot of light, but some of these clouds are a little bit lighter than others, so I might put a few more dots on them, on the you know, that edge, and it just kind of reiterates the lighting on them and kind of gives them a little bit of an edge to that. But anyways, here's our quick scene. I don't know, I think this, I didn't have a quote in here. You can stamp a quote or something like that. If you have space in here, there's a little bit of space up here for a quote. Oh. Now I've been blabbing away, and we're at the 31-minute mark here, okay? I think this scene can be done in, I don't know, 25 minutes probably. Although we've been working. But here's my little gulls. Nice, even pressure. Don't squash, you know, when we're stamping large stamps, you put a lot more pressure on them because it's pressure, you know, per whatever, square inch or whatever. Something like the gulls here, there's very little surface area, so you use less pressure, otherwise you're going to squash them. Okay. All right, so anyways, here's our quick scene stamp along piece. I think that looks pretty good. And like I said, you can embellish it a little bit more. This one has little crystals, though, so don't take too long to add. You just put a little dot of glue down here, but look at this, you know. Here's our half-page piece right here. Added Milky Way in here, but I think this one looks pretty good. And I really like that little column of light type of thing going on down here. But just a quick and easy card, but I think it's really quite full in terms of everything going on in here. I don't think we're missing anything in terms of this piece right here. I've certainly simplified the process by not having to put this beam over wet black ink that was created from this Milky Way. The Milky Way in the background gives it that little extra texturing like that, you know, in the background like that, which is really fun. And you can see where the black covers up the blue. Then when you do something like that, it really brings those kind of unstamped areas to life like that. Where in this one right here, it's just the full area like that. But again, this is like a little quarter-page card and, you know, relatively quick to do. So, I don't know, you can make any of these types of processes into a faster process just by kind of eliminating some of the things that, I don't know, get in the way of kind of a faster application of everything. In this case, it was just laying down all the white things first and just doing a little bit of preliminary planning by knowing where that horizon line is going to be and where your lighthouse is going to be, okay? So, I don't know. It's a little bit of thinking ahead of time with something like that. On something like this one right here, I just knew where my angel was going to be, okay? And I stamped this out. There's a ton of clouds in here. This one took a long time because, you know, just the sheer amount of area to fill in, and then all the beams over the top of it. But, you know, with something like this, it's really simple to do. Where's your light beam going to be? If you're going to do that, you don't have to put that light beam in there. Sometimes I've had light beams coming off in two directions as well with the lighthouse. But yeah, horizon and light beam, and that's it. And just working around it a little bit more. Okay, so anyways, if you stamped along with me, I hope you had a great time. If you just watched, I hope you enjoyed the card, and I hope you, you know, play around with this, you know, the white and black pigment ink on kind of a darker cardstock process. Play around with things, different color schemes and whatnot. I think the dark blue is a really dynamic one to play around with. But I gotta imagine it would work with just about any type of color scheme that you want to play around with. It'll have a different emotional feel to it, just, you know, depending on the different colors used. But on something like this, can you imagine this with like a kind of like a toasted orange or something like that? I think this would look like a twilight type of scene or something, or maybe even a sunset. in this same process right here, but just with a, a different, foundation color to start off with. Now I want to get like an orange one of these, like see if there's a darker orange Stardream or something like that now. But I think that would be really fun to do. Okay, so anyways, if you have any questions, drop me a note in the comment section. And thanks as always for tuning into the Stampscapes channel.